Welcome to ARC360 On Demand. Brought to you in association with corporate partners BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emax, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Merca, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams, along with our partners Aztec, the Green Part Specialists, Indasa, Innovation Group, and Prasco UK. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to this ADAS special episode of ARC360 On Demand. I'm Mark Hadaway, your host for today's show. Many thanks for joining us. Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, ADAS, is nothing new. It's been around since the 1950s with the advent of the anti-lock braking system. However, for more than a decade, and certainly since 2015, ADAS has evolved at pace. Today's ADAS systems use automated vehicle technologies reliant upon cameras, lasers, radars and other such sensors throughout the vehicle to detect hazards, obstacles and driver errors and ultimately take the necessary action. Road safety is at the heart of ADAS development. The sector has for many years been adapting to varying degrees to the management of ADAS-enabled vehicles. However, despite the evolution of this technology being well documented, there appears to have been a flurry of activity in recent times as the realities of ADAS seemingly hit home. The introduction of Thatcham Research's UK Insurance Industry Requirements, IIR, for the safe repair of ADAS-equipped vehicles, backed by some 30 motor insurance brands back in July 2020, has arguably influenced such activity. The new requirements came into force at the end of March 2021. During today's ARC360 On Demand, we speak with four people well versed in ADAS developments. Richard Taylor, European Business Development Director, Aztec. Steve Plunkett, Volvo Body and Paint Business Development Manager. Rob Ward, Director, RWC Training Centre. And Sean Harper, Fleet Supply Chain Manager at S&G Response. We find out more about what they are seeing from their respective positions and just how the industry is managing ADAS. I really hope you enjoy the following show and we'd be delighted to hear any comments or feedback you may have. Either just drop them in the chat, the Q&A, or email me direct, mark@iloveclaims.com. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. So how has or is ADAS technology changing the claims industry at the moment?
It's changed, or probably should I say changing a lot. We have to remember why ADAS technology has been added to the vehicles. It's essentially to make the car safer and to support the needs of the driver. Technology, of course, is great, but because it's the latest thing for claims world to get to grips with, it essentially also makes things more complicated. And will no doubt give people within this industry a massive headache trying to understand it, keep up to date with the ever-changing development within the vehicles, and more importantly, understand how to ensure the vehicle is correctly put back into how it was pre-accident to ensure that the technology in that car continues to do what it was designed to do. The recent launch of the insurance industry requirements that was launched by Thatcham has now put a massive onus on the repairers to ensure the vehicles repaired are done in line with the OE requirements. This isn't something new for the repair industry, as they always work towards the standards that they've been put in front of them, but this is now one that requires further support from companies such as Aztec to ensure that when a collision repair is completed, this is complemented with a tech partner who can ensure that the necessary technology is used to validate fault codes, clear the fault codes, more importantly, complete the necessary calibrations required on whatever sensors are in the vehicles. These not being diagnosed or completed correctly will clearly have a significant implications on the vehicle when it is returned to the customer, who obviously is expecting that vehicle to perform as it was pre-accident.
Wow, complex area to say the least. So, and do you think, awareness levels are where they should be or need to be at the moment across the industry?
It's a great question. No, I think unfortunately not. But I think that's just a general consumer. Everybody in the industry, everybody in who drives a car is having the same issues. How many people, when you buy a second-hand car, as an example, know exactly what technology is in that car when you buy it? I've recently bought a second-hand car. That car had numerous fault codes on it when I purchased it. Now, that could be because that garage didn't do anything in terms of checking the device on the car to validate what's on it. None of them were collision related, but they were all fault codes that needed clearing. But they didn't have the ability to do that. But did they sell me the car telling me what technology was in my car? No. So I'm buying a car secondhand, and if I don't have the knowledge within the industry to understand what technology is in cars and how the technology works, I'm not aware as a general consumer of what my car will do for me if I'm involved in an accident, or what it won't do for me if I'm not, what it will do for me if I forget to brake, all the things that people buy cars for. And that's just as a general consumer. If you get into the body shop world, one of the biggest issues that they have is about, understanding when they get a car in, whether that car does have technology built into it. The methods support that clearly in terms of repairing the vehicle, but they have to have the insight before that to know that that car that you're about to replace the bumper for has got technology in that bumper that when you remove the bumper and refit it and reconnect the sensors is going to require a calibration. They normally find that out after the process if they do a post scan, and that scan brings up a fault code on a sensor in a bumper. At that point, they realize a calibration is required. One of the things that we're doing at Aztec is we've recently purchased a company in Canada called ADAS Think. What ADAS Think will do is it will take vehicle information. At the moment, it will take the estimate data. It will pull that data into our system, and our system will use the VIN information, the vehicle recognition information, to validate what technology is in that vehicle against what the repair requirements are for that particular car. So in my example about a bumper being removed, that estimate can be pulled into the ADAS Think platform. The ADAS Think platform will return, based upon the bumper being taken off and refitted, that there is a sensor in that bumper. So at the earliest point, i.e. the estimate stage, that repairer gets notified that that car is going to require a calibration. Now, where's the benefit from that? Well, the benefit is it raises the awareness to the body shop at the earliest point for them to understand that when they're negotiating the cost of that repair with the engineer, that car is going to require a calibration, rather than it being a surprise at some point down the line when they have to then renegotiate the cost of the repair, or even prove that the car's got a calibration requirement on it. And therefore that becomes a debate or a discussion that needs to be had in terms of the additional cost that they're going to have to put through on the claim. So I think awareness generally is a problem. I think awareness within the collision world is a problem. But I also look at this from a service and maintenance and repair world. We're talking to companies that do, replacement tires and brakes and discs and those kind of people. And, that some vehicles now, if you put new tires on and realign the wheels, you have to do a calibration. Now, as a general consumer taking your cars into a tire fitter to have 4 new tires fitted, and you don't know that car requires a calibration, it's a shock to you when you get your bill at the end of the process that they've added an additional however much money on top to have that car recalibrated in line with the way the car needs to be performing. Now, you imagine that car doesn't get calibrated and the wheels are not aligned correctly, or have been realigned and the sensors are not correctly lined up, or radars. Then, of course, you've then got another problem, which is that car's not going to perform as it was designed to perform. So, I think that generally, as a motoring industry, there are huge amounts of issues with regards to awareness of technology, how the technology performs, why it was in the car in the first place, and essentially, what needs to be done in terms of ensuring that car goes back to as it was pre-accident.
Great insight there. And what would you what would your message be to anyone involved in ADAS-enabled vehicle claims right now?
I think the first and most important bit is to fully understand the vehicle and what's in that car. And it kind of comes back to the previous point about awareness. But if they don't fully understand what technology is in that car, how can you ensure that that car is being put back to as it was pre-accident? We do a lot of work with windscreen companies when windscreens are being removed and refitted, and I have some really funny, interesting conversations with some windscreen companies, some of the independents who don't do calibrations on windscreens. and their view is they haven't touched the sensor, they've just taken the windscreen out and put a new windscreen in. Now, any person with any logic will work out that if you're taking a screen out, you're going to affect the sensor or the radar that's in the screen. So really, people need to be fully aware of exactly what is on that vehicle. It has to be the most important piece for anyone to understand about what they do on that car before they do anything on a vehicle. Because if you don't understand it, if you're not aware of it, how do you ensure that car is back to as it was? We have the ability within Aztec, because we use the OE tools, to be able to analyze and check all of the different modules built into cars. We're seeing a situation now with some of the vehicle manufacturer brands such as Nissan, where there's various different security gateways that are on the car. Those security gateways make it harder for devices to be able to access the information within those modules. So if you have a device that doesn't access all the modules and you have fault codes in a particular module that you can't recognize, then essentially that car is going to leave the service center, the body shop, the windscreen company without the calibration having been done, simply because the device didn't recognize the fault code because it couldn't open the module. Now you can start to see where some of these kind of issues are going to go. If you're aware of the fact that that vehicle does have a module on it and the repairer's device doesn't recognize that module or cannot find the fault code, but the repairer is expected to find a fault code, then essentially that would suggest that they need to plug in an OE tool directly into that car, because the OE tool might be the only thing that actually validates what's on that car in terms of fault codes. So it's a fog, I think, is how I've described this before, I think, in previous conversations. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the industry in terms of what's on cars, how do you fix them? You think about, some of my colleagues post some things on LinkedIn recently. Nick Dominato from ADAS think posted one this week about, what's genuinely required when you reprogram or recalibrate, flat floor, level clear, flat floor, so that you're going to have a nice clear and flat surface to be able to calibrate from. Fuel tanks being full, those kind of things are things that they now suggest need to be done on certain manufacturers. If people don't know this, if people don't understand how to go about doing a correct calibration on a vehicle, the chances are the sensors will not be aligned to where they need to be. There's a lot of kind of if, buts and maybes in this. Of course there are, because, this is an industry where until you plug a device in, you don't really know what's wrong with that car anyway. And how do you know what's wrong with that car unless you plug the right device in? So, there are lots of devices out there which will do the job. Yeah. But, how do you ensure that every time you're going to look at a vehicle, you know exactly what's wrong with that car in terms of the technology? The only way to do that really is to plug an OE tool into the car, because it's the only way you can guarantee, I guess, every single time that you're going to be able to check every single fault code on that vehicle. So I think the advice for people that are involved in ADAS claims, and my first point of advice would be, make sure you understand that car correctly. Do the work you need to do to validate what is on that vehicle. And ADAS Think will do that. And this sounds like a promotional piece, and I apologise for that. I don't really want to be standing here promoting ADAS Think, although I obviously will be when it comes to market. But, essentially that will do that. That will do that piece of work on behalf of the insurance companies, on behalf of the body shops, to provide that awareness to people to say, what you're about to do on that car is going to require you to do a calibration. And that should hopefully support the people that are repairing cars, servicing cars, replacing tyres, replacing windscreens, whatever they want to do with the car. Hopefully it will support them and will give some benefit to those that are involved in the ADAS-enabled vehicle claims, of the future.
Great stuff. Thanks very much for your time, Richard.
Absolute pleasure.
Right, so what's happening in the world of ADAS from a vehicle manufacturer perspective at the moment then, Steve?
Gosh, it feels like ADAS has been getting talked about for such a long time, doesn't it? It feels like it's been around forever. Obviously, it's not going to go away, but I'm still a bit surprised that we're still talking about it at quite a senior level. In the last few weeks, it seems to come sort of back around, doesn't it? But look, I think all this amazing technology we've got on these vehicles, not just Volvo, it's just going to keep growing and getting more enhanced. I feel as a program, as a network, we've got 75 body shops going up to 76 by the end of the year. And I'm quite happy that and comfortable that our own approved body shops, with the support of our retailers, are in a great place, to be able to handle this technology that's in the vehicles, including ADAS, repair them correctly, repair them safely, right first time. Tooling, training, equipment is all in place. And as you know, Mark, we encourage our body shops to work really closely with our Volvo retailers, our nominating retailers. So that's great for many areas, commercially and technically, which is more to the point, I guess, for this conversation. So if the body shop's got something they're struggling with, they've got a good relationship with their retailer, and they can call on them to support them. So, I mean, in our world, I suppose without going too off track from your question, EV really is the big thing for us this year, because pre-original lockdown, March 2020, we literally pressed a button to launch electric vehicle training for the approved network, sort of somewhere around about the 4th of March. And we're all systems all ready to go, everything all in place, online training, technical training at Daventry. And then obviously we didn't pull the plug on it, but it just got kiboshed because of COVID arrival, or coronavirus, I think it was called at the time, wasn't it? So, we're well back on track with that this year. We've got the first dozen technicians have been fully accredited since March 2021. So that's kind of our new thing, if you like. But as I've said several times before, when I get a chance to do something like this, or maybe do something in a magazine, I do get a bit frustrated that all this new technology is amazing, and I appreciate again, also as quoted before, it's been quite a tsunami for us alone as a brand since 2015, since we launched XC90, then XC60, XC40, V60, V90, S90, blah blah blah. 7 or 8 new models since 2015, and initially, as we launched XC90, then the first sort of 2 or 3 models like XC60 that then came out, they had something different on them as well to get our heads around, which I think is easier for our network and us as a program to get our heads around when we see these cars in our own network. But it's becoming increasingly more challenging for a non-approved VM body shop to get their heads around, to be able to repair this technology, whether it's ADAS or electric vehicles and whatever. But I get really frustrated that we're talking about the here and now and the products that were on the way and maybe are with us now and what's coming, but I still feel that the sector still ignores a lot of the technology that's been in our cars, particularly for many, many years, like the whips kits. How many VDAs, how many workshop managers, body shop managers, parts managers, parts advisors, insurance engineers know about our whips kits. And I'm not going to tell anyone about it now, because if they don't know, maybe they can Google it. But if they want to have a conversation about it, I'm more than happy to take a call or an email, of course. But there's still so many people don't even know about that, and that's just a basic safety function in every single Volvo, and has been there since the beginning of the early 90s, I believe. So yeah, ADAS, back to your point, I think we're in a great place, to be honest with you. As you know, Mark, we've spent a lot of time in almost the last 9 years now building up a multiple award-winning network. The last 4 years, the network has won the FIFA Awards through Volvo Car Insurance for exceptional customer handling and consistent quality, high quality of repairs. So I think we're in a great place, to be honest with you. And, the program just keeps getting enhanced year on year. It has to. That's our responsibility to our customers and back to the brand, that when it comes to repairing a Volvo, we need to be the leaders, basically.
Well, in terms of uptake, we've seen a huge increase. Bearing in mind that we first got approval to deliver the ADAS accreditation from IMI a good 2 years ago, if not a bit longer. And it was slow and steady during that period, but we knew that we had to get it on it early because, ADAS has been coming thick and fast. And really, lockdown aside, once we got into January and the start of February, the uptake has been huge for us. We used to run an ADAS accreditation. We'd perhaps do one a month or something, and we're now doing 2 or 3 a week. So, the uptake has been massive, which is great. And I think the driver behind that has been IIR. And to a certain degree, there's been an element of panic, and people have said, I need to get this done quick, rightly or wrongly. That's how it's been approached. But I feel as if that rush is over now a little bit, because we have seen it settle a little bit. So the panic is over. But of course, the necessity for many collision repairers to get that qualification and get awareness training throughout the rest of the business, it is still there. So we are still delivering a lot of ADAS compared to what we were before, but it has slowed up a bit. And in terms of it being just repairers, because we're in that market, that's all we really set up for, was to do collision repairers. But it soon became apparent that the ADAS accreditation is actually quite appealing to a much wider community than just collision. So we have done lots of windscreen companies, independent and mobile windscreen companies. We're also doing service centres. So it's a great arm for us to progress from collision into the mechanical market, the service market. So we've done a lot of service centres. And also we're now attracting the smart repairers. So smart repairers are now taking note of what ADAS is, getting their heads around it, trying to understand how it impacts on them, and whether they may or may not choose to go away and invest and do calibrations themselves. But the smart repairers are now coming to us as well. So our customer mix is much wider than we've ever had before on any other training courses or topics, and ADAS has been the thing that's opened that up for us. I think from a collision repairer's point of view, especially those that have not yet invested, they feel that the dealerships are the experts and the vehicle should go to the dealership. Whereas in reality, the dealerships are as much behind the curve as anybody else, in fact. So in terms of knowledge and knowing all the ADAS systems within the dealership, I think they're slow to the party. I wouldn't say they're the experts, because what's happening now is, although a dealership may have their own in-house ADAS calibration equipment and their people have now been trained, they're very dedicated to that one brand. Whereas repairers are now getting ahead of all that. They've got very good aftermarket kit that covers 80 to 90% of the OEM market. And they are becoming very familiar with all the different calibrations for different brands. So very quickly, in the last year or so, we've seen some repairers feel that the dealership is the only place to go and get calibration done. But now they've made an investment, had their own people trained, they've actually become a much higher level of expertise and knowledge in ADAS than the dealerships themselves, and sort of leaving the dealers behind. So I think a collision repairer should feel that they can now promote the fact that their business is an ADAS calibration centre, because as time goes on, Joe Public or the average driver will start to understand the systems they've got on their car, and they will understand that they need to be calibrated. So ADAS systems and ADAS calibration won't be a foreign language to most drivers. They will understand what that means, and they will come to a centre that promotes the fact that they are a specialist in ADAS and they have all that equipment and knowledge to do recalibrations. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about, in terms of what collision repairers need to understand, is that while that rush or that panic was on to quickly get some couple of technicians qualified for their ADAS accreditation, what repairers are now realising is that it's not just those technicians that matter. ADAS impacts on everybody in the business. So from non-technical customer-facing staff, they need to speak with a level of confidence to the customers to say, this is what we're going to do to your car, and this is what it means, and it's safety related, and we'll make sure it's all done before we give your car back, and you'll also get a certificate to say that it's all being done for you. I don't feel at this stage, in most repairers, that reception staff or customer-facing staff can talk with that level of understanding and confidence. I think that needs to happen. And much the same as we're doing training now for smart repairers, ADAS awareness training, that awareness training really fits across a collision repair business. So paint sprayers also need that awareness training, because if they're going to repair and paint a rear bumper and the MET technician is not involved because the bumper doesn't need to come off, paint sprayers need to be aware of where they're working, what's behind that bumper, and what impact that might have in terms of location of repair and paint film thickness. So there's some ADAS awareness modules across the whole business, not just the accreditation for technicians that are carrying out calibrations. I think, like anything, I think the way that this now needs to be introduced to the industry is in layers, technical layers. So while I would say that everyone in the business needs an understanding of ADAS, they don't all need the same training. So the paint shop, for example, might need certain types of input, whereas MET, probably the most technical level, where those are the people doing the calibrations. Body repairers also need a level of awareness as well. So in different disciplines across the workshop, there needs to be different inputs so everyone understands it properly. Obviously, the ADAS IMI accreditation is what it is, and it's mainly aimed at MET technicians, and it's got a practical element to carry out a couple of calibrations. But for everybody else who perhaps needs some awareness, there are now some online courses available, which we've now adopted, which are slowly becoming quite attractive, because repairers can actually say, well, I'll get all the VDAs done and all the reception staff all through an online, which can be an IMI certificate, which always looks good as well, to show that your staff are up to date on ADAS. So we offer that, but also to help repairers keep up with the pace, there's now a good number of different calibration equipment manufacturers out there, and they're climbing over each other really to get market share. And I think repairers, certainly going back, any repairer that invested in ADAS calibration equipment a year or 2 years ago, now would probably admit that they jumped in a little bit quick and didn't take the time to get independent advice on what the different systems are and what's out there. Those systems are improving all the time. And I think the key to it is how quick you can set that kit up and do a calibration. Because the cost, what you can charge out for a calibration, is only going to creep down and down. If it's sold on hours and you can get 1 or 1.5 units, 1.5 hours per calibration, that's great, but it's really about getting it done as quick as you possibly can. So, we're now in a position, because at RWC, we've been training ADAS for a couple of years now, and we have understood and worked with all the different systems. We're now in a strong position to give independent advice to any repairer and say, if you're ready to invest in ADAS, these are your options. This is the different equipment available. This is some of the pros and cons. we don't necessarily promote or sell one system over another, but we do understand them all. So we're more than happy to speak to repairers about what some of their preferences could be and what their options are. And we also think that it's the right time now to look at over-the-air ADAS calibrations. So over-the-air ADAS is coming. It's almost next generation of what's going on. And we've had meetings and teamed up with a company last week to promote and train over-the-air ADAS calibrations and diagnostics. And I think that is quite an exciting area. And I think if I was a collision repairer and I thought I now need to invest in ADAS, I would want to know all of the above. I would want to know all the different systems available to me. Otherwise, I'm only hearing from one salesperson over here, one salesperson over there, and I could get confused messages before I invest. It's a big investment. It's the right investment to make, but choosing the equipment carefully would be best done with some independent advice, and we feel we can offer that.
Thanks for joining us then, Sean. So how has or is ADAS impacting on the claims process at the moment?
Hi, Mark. I've got to say it's having a quite a sizable impact, to be honest with you. We've got the process elements, which is making sure that everyone knows exactly what they are supposed to do. Obviously, from a claims management perspective, we're trying to facilitate that and make it as quick and simple and painless as possible, but it's not always that easy to do. You've then got the cost element as well. So we're seeing the average claims cost nudging up slightly due to the extra aspects that are involved. So from an S&G response perspective, we looked at the compliance perspective and gave our supply chain a fully gift boxed process, whereby we had a partner that had documented process. The repairer then just reached out to the documented partner and asked them to come in and do all the ADAS obligations, which was great from a compliance perspective. It streamlined the cost as well, because everyone knew what the cost was going to be, and because we pulled all our volume together, we'd managed to reduce the cost a little bit. The problem that we found was that it was actually elongating key to key time and claim life cycle a little bit, because the supplier was actually stopping and downing tools, waiting for the partner to turn up on site, whereas when they were using their own partner, they actually figured it in perfectly with when the vehicle was either being put back together or whether it was being stripped, and there was no effect on key to key time. So we've taken the view to let our partners do what they like in terms of who they use, but now we have documented evidence on every single vehicle where there's a repair that's appropriate to ADAS to show that they have done the right checks, they've done the right calibrations, and they've done everything that they're supposed to. They have to complete that documentation and then send it in. And if the invoice pack doesn't contain that information, it stops. We go back to the partner and they have to document it. So it's fully evidenced. So we try and make it as streamlined as possible and easy as possible, but we are finding that times are starting to be stretched a little bit and cost is starting to be pushed up a little bit, Mark.
Great stuff. Thanks for the insight there, Sean. And is this a result of the IIR? And has that had implications? More implications on the business?
I think so, and I think it's going to have more implications on the business. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't stop at where it's at the moment. It's going to carry on increasing, but yeah, it definitely has an impact. I think we'll probably know a little bit more about that over the next 3-6 months as the results come through, Mark.
And is ADAS kind of, what we would class as a starting point of the technical challenges to come? Is that how you're kind of seeing things in-house?
Very, 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 very much so. I can remember being at an ABP event. It was 7 years ago. The lovely gentleman from Aegeus predicted that within 4 years the whole of the vehicle would be controlled via the windscreen and via the ADAS sections. I think that is coming to fruition now. ADAS is just the start. If you look at the materials on the vehicles and the complexity of the technologies, we are only just starting, Mark. We really are. If you look at the next sections of what we're trying to do with vehicle technology, for example, autonomous driving, autonomous parking, which has already started, the trials have already started on that. It means there is only going to be more emphasis on technology and more emphasis on cost and more emphasis on time. Do I or do we think that that's a bad thing? I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing. I actually think it's a good thing. If you look at the materials on the vehicles now, in how they've changed in the last 5 to 10 years, it's seismic. It's changed massively. You know, the technology aspect, it's making vehicles safer. It is making accidents less frequent, but it comes with a cost. As does all technology. I think you can either embrace that or you can push against it. And I can firmly say that S&G Response and our repair network and our engineers are firmly embracing it. One aspect that I've left out of there is the electric vehicles aspect. You know, the claims frequency now on electric vehicles, it's rising month by month by month by month. Our working partners, our fleet partners who have never particularly looked into fleet are now looking into electric fleets and seeing the differences that can make. And they appreciate that there is a cost aspect. I think how we're trying to help our partners is some of them don't fully appreciate the compliance aspect. So to give you a very, very small example on PG9 commercial small repair, okay, our fleet managers and our fleet masters are asking us to get that vehicle back on the road within 2 hours, which is something that we've always surpassed. We can get that vehicle back on the road in close to 60 minutes, be it at the end of the day or be it before that asset is due out the next day. We're now finding that we're pushing back on the fleet manager and actually making sure that he knows his obligations in terms of the vehicle safety and the vehicle compliance, which is something that they've never particularly thought about or interpreted into their cost model. So we're finding that it's almost like a hand-holding exercise. We first have to explain to them the actual compliance aspect and what we have to do as partners. That doesn't happen straight away. We have to tick a box to get to that stage. Once we've got to that stage, you then go through the cost aspect of, okay, the small repair might have cost £200, £300, £400 before, and that was the end of it. But if it's related to the indicators or the lighting system or the bumper system, there is going to be a connotation on the ADAS aspect, and that comes at a cost. We have to make sure that that vehicle is 100% compliant. If there is a slight increase in cost, we'll do that, but make sure the cost is at an absolute minimum and the key is reduced and not impacted at all. But Mark, you know the industry that we work in, everything is technology. It's all technology based. This is literally just the start of it. It's going to increase.
Fantastic insight. Thanks very much for joining us, Sean.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciated.
So there we go, a fascinating insight into the current state of ADAS management from across the industry from 4 very different perspectives. It's clear that the technology tsunami, as it has been labelled, is now well and truly underway. And as several alluded to during the interviews, ADAS is the start of that. A huge thank you to Richard, Steve, Rob and Sean for their contribution to today's show. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so please do drop a message in the chat or email me direct at mark@iloveclaims.com. Really hope you've enjoyed the show. I look forward to catching up with you all very soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for watching ARC360 On Demand. Brought to you in association with corporate partners BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emax, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Merca, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams, along with our partners, Aztec, the Green Parts Specialist. Endasa, Innovation Group, and Prasco UK. We look forward to you joining us next time at ARC360 On Demand.